Ethical dilemmas are something that everyone faces every once in a while. We have all encountered situations where we don't know what the best choice is. Should we always tell the truth? Should we put the needs of the many if it means sacrificing a few? Or should we always stick to our principles, no matter what happens? Today, I am going to cover two ideas that have been widely discussed in philosophy, many considering them to be the most important debates related to ethics: categorical imperatives and utilitarianism. Should one follow a strict set of principles when dealing with moral questions, or is the end result more important? Different cultures have distinct ideas of what is the best course of action in a given situation, but when choices arise when someone ends up suffering no matter what you choose, things get tricky. I'll give several mind-blowing examples of this debate in action, as well as practical situations that will have to be reflected in our laws. I will discuss why these ethical dilemmas are important for fields such as artificial intelligence and the way we implement autonomous technologies. But first, let's have a quick overview over the philosophical background behind these principles. Categorical imperatives are beliefs that an action is good or bad through a series of principles. The basis of this way of thinking was laid down by Immanuel Kant in the 18th century. He explains that our actions have to be decided on a series of rational principles. He wrote about the formula of humanity, or the second categorical imperative, a principle which states that we should always treat people as an end in themselves, and never as a means to an end. This is a condensed summary of Kantian ethics, but the key point to remember is that people should always have their autonomy respected. Utilitarianism, on the other hand, explains that in order for people to make good decisions, they have to focus on the end result, or the consequences of those actions. The basis for this point of view was developed by philosophers such as John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. They wrote about the principle of utility, that every choice we make should take into consideration the greatest possible good for the largest amount of people. But does this mean that it is morally acceptable to do immoral things to reach that goal? The discussion between categorical imperatives and utilitarianism is important for a variety of reasons. Something many people will agree on is that some suffering is greater than other suffering, the same with some goodness being greater than other goodness. I would love to go deeper into the subject, including the principles behind act and rule utilitarianism, but I'll place the amazing episode of Crash Course Philosophy that explains them in the description if you want to learn more. Now let's see how these ideas apply to the famous trolley problem. Now that we have our basic understanding behind the categorical imperatives and utilitarianism, we can discuss the trolley problem, a dilemma that is popular in philosophy for making us think ethically about decisions where somebody always loses, and how we can make the best possible choice. Imagine that you're standing in front of a lever that controls a switch that changes the direction of a trolley heading the intersection at full speed. On the track it is heading towards, there are 5 people tied to it. By letting it go in the course it is heading, those people will die. However, you can choose to pull the lever, changing the trolley's direction, but it will kill another person who is tied down to the other side of the track. You have a minute to decide what you're going to do. Will you change the direction of the trolley, saving the lives of 5 people, but being directly responsible for the death of the person on the other side? Or will you choose not to act, sticking to your principle of not killing, but 5 people die as a result of your inaction? As you can see, this is a difficult dilemma. We can observe that sometimes not acting is an action in itself, and how in some situations there are no easy answers. Is there a logical way to solve this problem, or does it all come down to the individual's moral system? If the latter is the case, how do we write these principles into our own laws? Everyone agrees that some things are more painful than others. If you slap a person, it does not cause the same amount of pain as if you would stab them. The same way, some things are more pleasurable or meaningful than others. If you give somebody a box of chocolates as a gift, it does not cause the same amount of pleasure as if you would give them a ticket to see their favorite artist in concert. Does this mean that we can quantify pain and pleasure? Let's imagine we measure a slap to the face as 10 pain units, and stabbing somebody in the stomach as 1,000 pain units. If we apply this principle to every moral decision we made, could we achieve a perfect ethical system? Well, someone could argue that by that logic, stabbing somebody would be preferable to slapping 200 people in the face. Here you can see how this system starts to break down. Some things are hard or even impossible to quantify and assign a value to, ethically speaking. Still, we process issues of principles and how we make decisions based on the value we subconsciously attach to people and things. Of course, this decision process can be very subjective. If someone gave me a concert ticket to go see 7 Lions, it would cause me much more pleasure than a ticket to go see Ariana Grande, even though Ariana Grande is much more popular. In an objective sense, the most popular artist is bound to cause more pleasure, right? But due to my subjective point of view, I would choose 7 Lions every time. Should we make more decisions based on subjective values? This idea can be used to determine what needs apply to different people, but most importantly, why decision making on a broader scale can be tricky. There are other variations of the trolley problem that present even harder questions. Now, imagine the same scenario with different people on the tracks. What if you had to kill a criminal to save 5 doctors, or kill a doctor to save 5 criminals? Does this influence your decision? Is it ethical to assign a different worth to people based on who we are, or should moral decisions be impartial? Let's explore a second scenario. Imagine that instead of having to pull a lever, the only way to stop the moving trolley is to push the victim into the track. By saving the 5 people, you had a closer contact with the person's death. This puts Kant's idea that people should never be a means to an end in a bigger spotlight. Thus pushing the person instead of pulling the lever influence your decision, even though the same result is the same for both situations. For many people this is the case, but we can't explain to ourselves why. This brings us to the idea of moral distance. Moral distance is one of the most unspoken yet impactful ideas in our society. Every one of our actions has an effect on other people, sometimes on a personal level, but also on large-scale abstract situations, such as corporations that mass-produce products that have severe impacts on the environment and human rights. In these cases, us, as the consumers, have a direct impact by influencing demand. Yet we don't feel responsible for the effects these corporations cause. This is due to 2 reasons. The first one is because consumers believe that because the blame is distributed on everybody, not just them, it absolves them of any guilt. The second reason is due to moral distance, the idea that because we don't see the tangible effects of our actions, it makes them seem more distant as if we were witnessing them in front of us. Let's explore the issue of charity. Let's imagine we saw someone on the street about to die, and the only way to save them would be to give away $500 on the spot. Many of us would not hesitate to do it. We place a lot of value on human life, and being so close to the dying person influences our biases and our desire to help. But if we imagine this hypothetical person was on the other side of the world, and instead of being in the moment, an organization told us that we could give $100 guaranteed to save or help the quality of life of the person, many of us hesitate to give our money away. This is a very simplified example of what I think is one of the most important issues in our society today. Most people ignore the fact that their choices have a direct impact on the world. They live on the principle that their actions are confined to their immediate surroundings, or that somebody else will take care of the world's problems. Let's focus on a more tangible issue. Animal farming comes with plenty of baggage, especially surrounding industrial factory farming. These places, besides causing incalculable suffering to animals, leave a lasting mark on the environment. In order to produce meat and some of the clothes we wear, these animals have to be killed in brutal ways. If you ask the vast majority of people, they would say that they would never kill an animal, especially in the ways they do it in slaughterhouses. A lot even call themselves animal lovers, and everyone understands these creatures can suffer. However, people's consumption is a direct cause of the demand that drives these industries. Many object, saying that that isn't the same thing, but this brings us again to the idea of moral distance. Pulling the trigger, causing someone to die in front of you, does the same amount of damage as if they were 1,000 miles away. But for some reason, people have a bias when it comes to ignoring suffering that happens in abstract, larger-scale terms opposed to suffering in the moment. Should we even use animals for our own interests? Does Kant's formula of humanity apply to them? If not, then why not? Animal ethics is a vast topic that will get its own videos in the future, but for now, remember that the idea of moral distance is important when discussing ethics. As we have seen so far in this video, thinking about these kinds of hard questions is hard, but ultimately necessary if we're going to ensure a just future for everybody. More importantly, choosing what kind of laws we're going to accept in our society. I have already discussed the issue of moral distance relating to people in need and animal farming, but something that would also have to be discussed at length are the ethical principles applied to artificial intelligence and automatic systems. Let's explore self-driving cars for a minute. In the future, where car manufacturers start putting these vehicles on the road, a lot of issues will have to be considered from different perspectives such as engineering, laws, and ethics. I highly believe that self-driving cars are the future and will help humanity tremendously. On March 18, 2018, 49-year-old Elaine Herzberg was tragically killed in what is the first recorded death involving a self-driving vehicle. Herzberg was hit by an Uber test vehicle, which was operating in autonomous mode. Even before this tragedy, many self-driving car companies and engineers have entered a new existential arena. They will realize that the way we integrate these systems into self-driving cars need to have every single scenario thought through. However, it is important to remember that they will be a net positive if implemented correctly in our roads. In the United States, the number of annual deaths per 100,000 people was 11.14 in 2019. That is over 36,000 people. Although the numbers have gone down since 1990 due to better traffic safety measures, it is still unacceptable that so many still die in these tragic accidents. In my personal view, human beings were never meant to drive vehicles. If you think about it, these are huge, multiple-ton machines that go down roads at ridiculous speeds, where one quick mistake is the difference between life and death. We have all agreed to perform this intricate dance through these machines on the road, with a profound sense of trust in other people, the only thing keeping us alive. Trust that makes us confident that every other person behind the wheel is sane, sober, and dedicating their full attention to what they are doing. Of course, as we have seen, this is not always the case. Are we meant to live with this unpredictability? With self-driving cars, the fallibility and unpredictability of human attention and emotion will be removed. Using technologies such as V2X, or Vehicle to Everything, every variable that can affect traffic will be thought out and implemented into the algorithms. Besides significantly decreasing road accidents, self-driving vehicles remove heavy traffic in cities and free up the time we use for driving. We have every reason in the world to adopt these vehicles, but there are some issues that we will have to face in the future, especially while we are in the middle of the transition and there are both human and autonomous drivers on the roads. In a TED Talk, Patrick Lynn poses the following scenario. You're riding in your self-driving car, and suddenly a large box falls from the truck in front of you. The car will have to make a quick decision by either swerving into a different vehicle or not doing anything, sacrificing the life of the passengers. There are several ways this software could be designed. By taking an utilitarian approach, the car could analyze who is riding on the other cars by using the data in the road system, and using that to decide what direction to swerve. Should it always choose, say, a family over a single person or someone with a higher credit score? Obviously, this raises some concerns by placing value and discriminating on human lives, as well as privacy concerns of letting the system know who is riding in which vehicle, reaching dystopian territory. It takes us back to the trolley problem, where making such choices always ends up in somebody losing. Another solution to this dilemma would be to implement randomness in the design, by simulating human unpredictability on these last resort scenarios. This would make it so that there is no bias to blame in these situations, but again, it raises a lot of concerns. If such choices can be designed and implemented, whose responsibility is it? If you're a consumer and you could choose between a car that prioritizes your life or that of the largest amount of people, which car would you choose? Or should we leave this choice to the manufacturer, trusting that the algorithms they decide will always make the best decisions? These types of situations also raise questions about who is legally responsible for the accidents involving self-driving vehicles. Is it the car manufacturer or the companies that design the sensors? What about those who design the software in charge of making these decisions? Or it could even be the local government who design an environment not fit for the standards of these vehicles. When it comes to legal liability, these questions need to be explored thoroughly. Having an understanding of these trolley-like problems is going to be fundamental for technology ethicists and AI engineers. But it could also apply to day-to-day situations. Studying ethics and philosophy leads one to make better decisions, considering the different paths a person can take by either sticking to a series of principles or trying to maximize the end outcome of a situation. How would you design a self-driving vehicle? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching this video. If you'd like me to make more philosophy-related content tying it to the most important technological and environmental issues today, please let me know in the comments. I would love to make more videos like this in the future, and if you'd like to start a discussion, please let me know in the comments or message me on Instagram and Twitter. I love to discuss these issues with my followers. So anyways, that would be everything for today, so I'll see you later everybody, and thank you all for watching Tomorrow Matters.